Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special short pause discussion this evening where Brent and I are going to hop on here and discuss the brand new Halloween movie that is newly in theaters this weekend. So I'm Ben, on the other end of the microphone. That's the aforementioned Brent. We're here on behalf of Short Pause. www.shortpause.com is the website. You can follow us on Twitter at the Short Pause. I know what you're thinking. This is a video game channel, a video game website. What in the hell are you guys doing talking about Halloween? Well, occasionally we do like to partake in the old films as well. So occasionally we'll watch a movie, we'll hop on here, we'll do a discussion about it. We've done it in the past for some of the Star Wars films, for It, and a few other things here and there. We've had a good time doing these. So, what better way to get back into this, get back into the spirit of Halloween than with the movie Halloween itself? So it seemed apropos, Brent, for you and I to hop on here and talk about this film from a franchise that's very near and dear to your heart. To your heart. How are you doing this evening, man?
I'm good, dude. I'm ready to talk about this movie. This is probably one of my most anticipated movies of the year. Like you said, I'm a big fan of the original. It haunted my dreams as a kid, and I always just was fascinated with Michael Myers as a villain because he was just there was nothing to him. He was just a serial killer. It was like Dr. Loomis always said, just full of pure evil. And granted, some of the subsequent sequels, a lot of them, tried to introduce different theories to try to give him a backstory, and it just didn't work. And they were poorly written and poorly acted. Save a couple of performances, but this is the one we've been waiting for. I mean, we've got an unlikely director in David Gordon Green, and an even more unlikely writer in Danny McBride. So I was really excited for this movie. I went and saw it on Friday. I know you went and saw it today. I'm really excited to talk about it. There's a lot we need to discuss about it, but let's get it going, dude.
Yeah, definitely, man. So a lot going on, a lot to discuss here. So what we're gonna do here is this is basically gonna be like a spoiler cast for the movie. So if you have not watched Halloween, this is your final warning. Get out now. Do not watch this video. Do not partake in it until you have seen the film, because we're obviously going to talk about some things that happen in the movie. We don't want to spoil it for you. We want you to be able to go in there fresh and experience it the way that Brent and I did. So if you have not seen Halloween and you are interested in preserving that original experience when you go and sit down in the theater, please leave the video now. But please also come back after you've watched the film and share your thoughts in the comments down below. If you have seen the movie, definitely be a part of the conversation. Hop into the comments there. Brent will moderate the chat and view that throughout the show. So we appreciate any and everyone who steps foot in there. So once again, spoiler warning: get out if you have not seen the film. Last warning. All right. So with that said, Brent, so I don't really have a set way to go about talking about this film. But you saw the film. You sent me an initial text off of kind of like your hot take, so to speak. And I hate that word, but it's I'll just use it here. It's for lack of a better term. But you sent me your kind of hot take on it, and I think it's a good jumping off discussion for what we're gonna do in the show here. So we're just gonna have a conversation about this movie. Just two fans talking about the movies, talking about the movie, talking about what we thought of it. We'll see where the conversation takes us. I have some different things that I hope we touch on during the discussion, and we'll definitely bring those up throughout the show. But let me toss it over to you, dude, as our resident Halloween just aficionado. Where do you want to start with this thing, man?
Well, first off, I want to start with a little discussion about you as well, because, I've seen the original Halloween hundreds of times, and it never, ever gets old for me. I've always been a huge fan of Carpenter's classic, the way he directed it, the way he shot it, the way he set up the characters, and the way he kind of let Michael just kind of do his own thing behind the scenes. The reason I love Halloween so much is just because of a lot of the stuff that you don't know what's going on, a lot of stuff that you don't see. The way that Carpenter used Michael as a stalker as opposed to just him just jumping up and slashing everybody. Michael was always just kind of off camera a little bit, or just kind of hidden and shrouded in the darkness, and you could never really tell where he was at. And it was just the sense of dread knowing he was around the corner, but you didn't know if he was going to strike or what he was going to do. And that's what I thought John Carpenter did so well in that movie. It was a taut, intense experience, and it didn't have to rely on a lot of the slashing stuff that spawned from Halloween through the 80s and through the 90s. It was just a very smart, a very simple plot, but it was directed with just expertise from a very young, fairly new John Carpenter, and obviously Jamie Lee Curtis
on a very low budget.
Very
Yeah,
low
like
budget.
all that stuff. This was like that was like a movie you and I could have made in our backyard. Like
Yeah.
it was that kind of budget.
Yeah, and the thing, and it's funny you talk about the budget. I mean, they just announced earlier tonight. First of all, this movie was made on a $10 million budget. That's what Blumhouse does. They make these awesome horror films for very little money, but they make a ton in returns. And Halloween has gone out and surpassed Rob Zombie's 2007 Halloween attempt at Halloween, which was the highest grossing Halloween movie to date. Was $26 million in its opening weekend. David Gordon Green's Halloween just dropped for $77 million on a $10 million budget. So this thing is very much like the original, low budget with huge returns. And it just shows that, there is, despite the entire list, of just terrible sequels in this franchise, people still want to see Michael Myers. Michael Myers is still very appealing to audiences, whether you're a fan of the series or just a fan of horror. Everyone's always been appealed by Michael Myers just because of the simplicity of the guy. He wears a jumpsuit and a William Shatner mask that's turned inside out, painted white. He doesn't have any special powers. He doesn't have anything like Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees. He's just a dude that stalks you at night. And everyone, and I think it's the simplicity of the evil of Michael Myers. It's you don't know what his motivation is. You don't know why he's doing what he's doing. That is the most terrifying thing about Michael Myers. It's all random. There's nothing behind it. You don't know what's going on with him.
Yeah, I think the special powers may be debatable. He is seemingly immortal, and nothing can stop Michael Myers. So there's something there in terms of that. But yeah, dude, I think you're spot on with what you're saying. So yeah, one of the great things about the original Halloween was the just the sense of tension that Carpenter was able to create in that movie. Like Michael's final victim count was something like 5 people. Over the course of that movie, and some of those people we didn't even see. Like there's the guy that's in the bushes or whatever at the beginning of the movie.
Right.
Like that kind of stuff we weren't even privy to that. So there's a few of the people that he offed that we didn't even see, and it was the way Carpenter directed that you never really knew like what was going to happen. Like I think a perfect example of that is the whole extended sequence with Annie. Like in that first film where she's out, she gets trapped in the laundry room or whatever, and like that's you. It's just like, all right, it's obvious she's about to get offed right now. There's all this creepy stuff going on and this and that, but she makes it out of there, and Michael never attacks her. The girl's out there, and we kind of go back about our business, and eventually he comes back around and claims her as one of his victims. But like that, the way that whole sequence played out, I thought was just really clever, and it's something that we don't see in horror movies pretty much at all nowadays. Just the fact that we're gonna build up the suspense and tension and give you this idea that you never know what's gonna happen around the next corner. You never know where Michael's at. To the point where we're at now, where it's just like horror movies, just whatever, just everybody's getting killed left and right. It's just slasher cliche 101. So I do think that that's a big part of what the original Halloween was all about. And honestly, man, that's probably missing in this film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and here's my I'm gonna just kind of go like this. This is a movie of 3 parts for me. Okay, there's the opening third of the movie where we catch up with Laurie Strode 40 years later, and I do want to give a shout out. Jamie Lee Curtis is very, very strong in these early scenes. She does a great job at conveying the sense of trauma that she has endured over the years from that night. It's not like she's just some kook. I mean, it's a very taut performance. It's a very strong performance. She shows a lot of emotion. She's and they really touch on that. She talks about how she's been through 2 divorces. She can't keep a marriage. Her daughter hates her. She has very little contact with her granddaughter that her daughter knows of. But there's just this. It does a great job of just showing like how much it's affected her. I mean, she lives in a house in the woods that has a gate that's locked off. It's got infrared lighting. It's got weapons. It's got an arsenal. I mean, it's
like a fallout shelter.
Yeah, it really is. And so she's got this huge fort, and it just again though it's the scenes where these 2 podcasters are trying to like put on a show where they discuss serial killers, and they look at it from both sides. They try to be empathetic to both the serial killer and the victim, and try to find a connection that can maybe bring everyone together in some kumbaya thing. I don't really understand what they were trying to do, but there's a scene where they go visit Laurie Strode that's very, very strong, and I really just enjoyed Jamie Lee Curtis's her turn in the first third of the movie. I thought it was very, very good. Okay, so they set things up. Michael escapes. You know, there's a bus accident. He's getting transferred from one facility to another to spend the rest of his days there. Laurie is there. She has another strong scene while he's being transferred out. And somewhere in the middle of the night, something happens on the bus. It crashes. Michael escapes. And we kind of go back into the second act of this movie. Now, I'm going to skip over that one, come back to the third act, because the second act is the one that I have an issue with. But the third act, everyone, basically makes it back to Laurie Strode's house, and there's a final showdown with Michael, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. I thought the third act was very, very strong. I thought it was the most Halloween of the movie, the most, comparable portion to the first movie itself. But first of all, the first act, very, very strong. Now, boys, I want to get your thoughts on the first act. Then we're going to dive into the second act because I have some issues with the second act.
Yeah, I kind of, I do like the way that the film started off. Some of the stuff with the journalists or the podcasters, whatever you want to call them, some of that stuff was probably a little overwrought. The whole like screaming at Michael to get him to talk to him or whatever, like some of that stuff, I was just like, I could take or leave that. But the stuff with the scene with Laurie where they're in her residence, trying to get her to just the audacity of this guy to come in and ask for her to talk to Michael. It's like, what?
Yeah.
It's like, you're talking to a woman whose last 40 years of her life have been completely ruined by this incident 40 years ago, and you want her to go talk to this guy face to face? Like, how much of a selfish prick are you? So his fate was sealed during that scene. There was no question. Like, all right, yeah, this guy's definitely getting off because he's clearly a prick. And it's funny that they used that guy as like the vehicle to get Michael to get his mask back,
right?
Which I thought was funny. And dude, there's just as a side note here, there's a lot of leaps of logic and kind of like the stupidity in this film. And one of the ones is how Michael just finds these people at these gas stations after he crashes off this bus. He just rolls up into this place where these people are and just knows that his mask is there. But that's neither here nor there. It's just, I think that's just some of like the goofy stuff you get from horror movies sometimes. But yeah, I like the setup and really the beginning of the film. There's really no horror in the beginning of this movie. There's a lot of interactions, there's a lot of setting up the characters, which is interesting because I think that Halloween does have an interesting lore, and I think there's a lot that you can mine out of it. And obviously, it hasn't always been mined to the best of its capabilities. But I think there is some interesting stuff to mine here, and I think they set up some interesting stuff in the beginning part of this movie here. The kind of finale of that act is Michael kind of coming into his own. He offs the two journalists in a scene that, once again, man, there are a number of scenes in this movie were just kind of telegraphed by the trailers, which I just absolutely hate, dude. I just can't stand. I knew what was going to happen in that scene. I'm just watching it play. I'm like, all right, I've already seen this in the trailer. I already know what's going to happen. Yada, yada, yada. We'll just play this on. Same thing with a few of the other scenes later in the movie. Like, yep, I already know what's going to happen here. So it's like, I hate that stuff, man. I wish they would do a better job with these horror trailers of trying to hold back some of that stuff. But whatever. That's a whole nother separate discussion, right? My abhorring of movie trailers. But yeah, I agree with you. The first act, I think we're strong. I think it set up the movie, pretty well. And I was really interested to see like where things were going to go from there.
Mm-hmm. And so now that brings us to the second act, when Michael returns to Haddonfield, and it starts off with a great tracking shot where he's in the neighborhood. Kids are out trick-or-treating. He makes his way through the neighborhood. In between houses, he's taking people out left and right. And the one thing I want to give David Gordon Green some credit for is he doesn't really go crazy with the slashing elements. You see more or less the results of what happens to people when they encounter Michael. There's not a lot of him like you seeing the actual act of killing some of these people. Like at the beginning of the gas station when the journalists die, there's a guy in there in the store whose jaw has just been realigned off a desk. You don't actually see that happen, but you see the aftermath of where Michael goes, just to get a sense of his brutality. So I thought that was really cool, how it wasn't so much the shock value of seeing someone get killed, but you do see like this aftermath of where Michael's been. But as he's doing this shot to the houses, again, I thought it was a really nice shot, how he's basically going through one house, kills one lady, goes outside, and like it's funny because he's seriously killing people and nobody knows who he is. He's just a dude walking around with the mask, and he seems harmless because it's Halloween. And he goes into another house and he kills him. You get a little bit of a human side to Michael after he goes into the first house, the first house that he kills the lady. He walks by a crib and there's a baby crying. And Michael walks by and he looks down and he walks out. And you're just like, okay, so not a total monster. They kind of give him some that, and I mean, I think that's where, it gives him a little bit of depth, just a little bit. He's still a one-note character. He's Michael Myers. He's pure evil. But I thought that was interesting how you kind of get that just a little restraint. He's not a complete monster where he's going to kill a baby in a crib, and it makes you wonder, what is his, what sets him off? What makes somebody, worth killing? That's what I thought that was really interesting about the scene. How does he draw the line? But I thought that was an interesting shot there when he did that, how he avoided the baby.
Just on that real quick too. I thought back to Halloween 2, the original Halloween 2 with that scene, because as Michael is moving his way through the hospital, he actually passes a room full of babies, and just kind of moves on. It's not part of his like mission or whatever at the hospital. Like those aren't the people on the hit list. He killed every single other person in that hospital except for those babies. Yep. I'm pretty sure he eliminated every single person on the staff, or every single person that was walking through those walls, except for the babies. So it's been kind of this reoccurring thing with him, and he does. I guess he killed that one kid like early in the movie.
Yes, he does. Yeah, the kid when they first show up at the bus scene. Yeah,
at the bus scene. So he does. I don't know like what his age limit is, but it's like all right.
Do you have your license yet? Yes.
Yeah. Once you hit puberty, you're fair game, I guess. I don't know what his kilometer is out there. But even like the kid he encounters, in like during this second act, the one whose closet he's hiding in.
Right.
Like he didn't kill the kid. He was waiting for the other people that were in the house to kill them. So there's some weird stuff there, and I don't know if they're trying to hint at something with his character or something with the lore of Michael or whatnot. But yeah, it's interesting that he generally spares the children.
And David Gordon Green mentioned, he mentioned there's going to be a lot of nods to the sequels, even though they're not using the lore that those sequels established. They are going to.
There's a lot.
There's a lot of, and I can't help but wonder, maybe that baby scene is kind of a nod to the second one. Some of them are obvious nods. Some of them are less obvious that only the hardened would really recognize. And that could be something right there. He walks by the babies, looks, doesn't do anything, and moves on. That could be a little bit of a nod to Halloween 2.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That was the first thing that went through my mind when I watched him do that. I was like, just a little
love. Yeah. And we have that scene, and then it just kind of goes into my issue with the rest of the second act is it's really devoid of any of the tension that's in the original Halloween. We don't get any of the stalking. We don't get any of there's Michael in the distance, behind. I mean, there was a perfect shot where at their babysitter's house, she's outside. There's a clothesline of clothes. It would have been perfect to see Michael just kind of like lingering in the darkness. We didn't get any of that. There's barely any of that stuff in this movie, and I felt like that was the weakest part about the second act. Is it was just basically Slasher 101. It was just basically him going around killing people, and it just kind of eliminated some of that tension that was so imperative and so important to the original, that defined the original. I feel like that was a missed opportunity for David Gordon Green in this one. There's just literally none of the stalking or lingering or just kind of like plotting out his attacks. He's just moving through houses and killing people. And I get that he's a serial killer, and I get you got to have things for a certain audience, nowadays compared to 1978. They'd never seen anything like that in 1978. It's 2018. We've seen a lot of stuff in horror movies, so you got to raise the bar a little bit, I suppose. But I just felt like that second act, as he's going through the neighborhood, it just was devoid of the tension that was desperately needed in that section of the movie.
No, I mean, I agree with you 100%, man, and we've kind of alluded to it at the beginning of this discussion. And to me, Brent, this once again was kind of a callback to Halloween 2. Like Halloween 2 was slasher 101, right? For Michael Myers.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned it in one of our previous conversations, like coming off the success of something like Friday the 13th, like
Yep.
maybe that had some type of an impact on what they decided to do with Halloween 2. But that was really what Halloween 2 was all about. It was just Michael like moving through that hospital and just killing people left and right. There wasn't a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the drawn out tension or those drawn out scenes that made some indelible marks in Halloween 1. I just go back to the Annie sequence once again, man. It took him 20 minutes to get rid of her,
Mm-hmm.
in the original Halloween. There's
Yeah.
all this tension and different things that are building up. Whereas in this movie, like these people are on screen for all 30 seconds, then they're just
Mm-hmm.
gone. Just like, there's Michael. I'm dead now. All right, let's move on to the next one. And it
Right.
was it was like it was all one note. It was all like, all right, I know what's about to happen here. This is not pulling the wool over anybody's eyes. There wasn't a
Mm-hmm.
lot of like sleight of hand or clever it was really just by the books slasher stuff, and I agree with you, man. That's a huge missed opportunity in this film.
Mm-hmm. And then and moving on from that, we'll stick at that babysitter's house. Is look, I know David Gordon Green and I know Danny McBride are basically have a lot of roots in comedy. They're very very good at it. I just felt like some of the humor in this movie was horribly placed.
Hmm.
And the main part is being at the house with the little kid. The
Yeah,
little kid has one good scene before Michael shows up where he's interacting with a babysitter. I
yeah.
thought he was hilarious. I'm like, this is a good spot for here. This was
Hmm.
really, really funny. I like this back and forth. And what that does is it creates a dynamic between the kid and the babysitter. It gives the babysitter some depth as a character. I mean, it's so easy to make like characters in this movie just one note, so you don't care about them, and they're just
Yeah,
fodder for Michael. I thought there was a
yeah.
nice little action between him and her that you kind of see her as a nice person. She's a really nice person. Like, okay, she seems really nice. So they have a little banter back and forth, and then he goes to bed. And
Hmm.
and that part was funny. He had some good lines there, and his
Yeah,
delivery was good.
yeah.
But then he goes upstairs. And moments later, he says, he sees somebody up there. And again, the babysitter comes up there, checks out the room. Everything's fine. And even after that, they have a nice little discussion where she's like, don't worry about it. Everything's good. And
Hmm.
it again, you're starting to like this character. She seems like a nice person. You don't want to see anything happen to her.
Yeah.
And then, like you see in the commercial, the preview, he's like, can
Yep.
you go close the closet door? And
Yep.
he's in there.
Yeah.
And so he jumps out and he starts attacking her. And before you can even be like, oh, no, the kid starts cracking jokes.
Yeah.
He's not cracking jokes. It's just the way they deliver it. He's trying. They're trying to go for a laugh, and I just felt
Yeah.
like, dude, the one time you have one of these teenagers that is it seems like a nice character that you're like, I don't want to see her die. She seems nice. You
Hmm.
got this humor in there to take away from the fact that she's getting killed, and you're just like, dude, you didn't need to do that. You didn't need that there. That was a bad spot for it. Yes, the kid is hilarious. I get that. But that scene right there, you had finally a character that was like, well, I don't want to see her die. And he's cracking jokes. And I was like, come on, dude. I mean, I wanted that tension. And the humor just took away from it.
Yeah. No, I agree. There was some misplaced humor, not only from the kid, but probably from what's her daughter's name? Allison, from her dad
Allison Madison,
as well.
yeah, her dad,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So some misfires from his side as well to try and inject humor into this film. Like I get it, you want these moments of levity when your picture is exceedingly dark, and like you mentioned, like that scene earlier where you're building the characters with like the babysitter and the kid, like that's a good spot to do it. But this is not like a slapstick affair, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I just felt like a lot of those moments just kind of cheapened the film and just cheapened the horror of it, and it just really made it just feel like campy, you know. And one of the things that I feel like this movie is trying to do is it's trying to deliver like a serious like Halloween picture. Like there's some goofy ass horror movies, dude. Halloween 2, for instance, to me is just a goofy film. There's a
Uh-huh.
lot of just silly stuff in that. I mean, even within this movie, there's a lot of goofy stuff in here. Right? The fact that this is Michael Myers we're talking about here, like the single most infamous thing to ever happen to this small city of Haddonfield, Illinois, and these people are just completely oblivious to this dude. They transport him from. I mean, it's funny too that they basically did the exact same thing in terms of getting him out into the world that they did in the original Halloween. Like he
Mhm.
just escaped from the mental asylum, And they did it again here. They take him out in a bus with no security, no personnel. He's not like shackled down where he can't do anything. They just take this guy who they know is quote unquote pure evil just from Dr. Loomis's teachings or his studies on Michael Myers, and they just put this guy on a bus and just let him just take the bus over and just go out into the city. There's this, and then he drives over, finds these people at the gas station somehow to get his mask back. Just nobody's locking their doors. It's just the obliviousness to the fact that Michael Myers is like what he was or was goofy to me. And there's obviously some other goofy stuff throughout the film as well. But yeah, man, I don't even know how I went off on this tangent and what we were talking about before this, but there was some goofy stuff in this movie.
Yeah, I can't help but wonder if they tried to kind of address that, the fact that everyone's kind of oblivious to Michael Myers. Earlier in the movie when Allison's walking down the road with her friends, and the one kid makes a good point. He's like, he killed 5 people like 40 years ago, and he's like, it's kind of like small potatoes compared to what we're enduring now as a society. I mean, it's really small potatoes. Some guy kills 5 people in a night, and it's whatever at this point. It's like that doesn't seem like that big of a deal. So I wonder if that's why the society itself has been desensitized, and they're not really concerned about some dude walking around in a mask, and it's just easy to forget about something like that with everything else that's going on. So I wonder if that's what they were trying to do when they saw it, to kind of give you an idea, kind of give a reason why, hey, nobody knows who this guy is because it was 40 years ago and nobody cares.
I do think that's a good point. Yeah, thinking back on that, I think that makes a lot of sense. So maybe for the citizens of Haddonfield, maybe Michael Myers isn't as big of a deal. But man, if you're transporting this dude from the insane asylum to his like final resting place or whatever cell block you're putting him into after 40 years, I'm not sure why they did it. They also do it on Halloween. They do it. It's just. And then Doctor what's his face? I don't know what the new Loomis. I don't know what his name is. Whatever the hell his name is. But new Loomis, he even said he's like, yeah, he's been waiting for this for 40 years. And it's like, seriously? Like you knew that they were going to transport you from the insane asylum to this other cell block on the eve, the 40th anniversary of your killings in Haddonfield. You just wait for this moment to get back out and run amiss. So yeah, there's definitely some silly stuff in there, but yeah, in terms of that's what we were talking about, like the misplaced humor and stuff. I agree with you. There were a few spots that it felt out of place. The kid is definitely a perfect example of that, and that's another scene there, Brent, too. That babysitter scene, clearly a callback to the first Halloween. It's basically note for note. You have the blonde girl, her boyfriend comes over, the kid's asleep or gone to bed or is no longer in the picture. You got friends coming over later in the evening, but you have the house to yourself at that point, and then Michael shows up. Man, it's literally the exact same thing that happens in the original Halloween. So I feel like that was a shout out to that scene as well.
Mm-hmm. And then we talk about the humor, and then the other issue I have with the second act is the plot twist.
Oh yeah,
where the new doctor, new Loomis, as Laurie Strode calls, oh, so you're the new Loomis.
Yeah.
And basically, what happens is, he survives the bus accident. He gets shot by some kid that was investigating the scene. He accidentally shoots the doctor. He goes into the hospital. He's out for a while. He makes his way back into the story, and he discovers that Laurie Strode's there. And the doctor, basically, his thing is he explains earlier in the movie when he meets the podcasters, he's like, look, he's fascinated with Michael Myers. He's fascinated by the fact that he hasn't been able to discover anything about Michael Myers. He can't get anything out of Michael Myers, and he wants to know so badly what triggers Michael Myers. He wants to get some kind of a response. Michael Myers hasn't said anything to this doctor in the 40 years or 30 years that he's been working on it since Loomis passed away. And so he's obsessed with it. And I get that portion of it. Okay, that's interesting. I mean, some people can. Loomis was able to handle Michael Myers for a long time, and he didn't snap. But this doctor is really, really obsessed with Michael Myers. And basically, what happens is after the doctor comes to, and he's riding around with one of the deputies from the sheriff's department. He attacks the deputy and kills him because basically the sheriff sees Michael Myers. They hit him with the car. Another reference to Halloween 2. And
another reference. Yep.
As they get out of the car to investigate Michael Myers, the doctor goes up to him, says he's dead. Then he turns around and he stabs the sheriff and the deputy in the neck. Will Patton goes down. He's dead. And then the doctor is basically doing this because he wants to get something out. He wants to find out what makes Michael tick. And like all of that part, I don't mind it. I just thought the execution was goofy. Like my man stabs the sheriff in the neck, and then he stands up. He's wearing the mask. He puts the mask on. He's like, so this is what it feels like. And I was just like, no. Okay, damn it, the execution, it was so goofy. It was like, and then basically you draw the conclusion that he's actually the person that because there were guards on the bus, but I think if you look at the beginning, the guards are all sitting on the side with the doctor, and then the gate is there, and then everyone's in the back. So clearly the only way anyone could overpower a guard is if they're on the side with the doctor. And so it's basically alluded to that he is the reason the bus crashed. There's no way Michael could get through the gate. So the doctor is actually the reason the bus crashes. He caused this because he wants Michael to get free. He wanted Michael to get out. That's why else would he be on the bus to go there? He said, I want to be there to make sure he gets transferred. Bullshit. He wanted to be there to cause something. I'm firmly believe that he is the reason that bus crashed, and this allowed Michael to escape and go back to Haddonfield. But just the execution of it was just really goofy. And then the doctor is just basically, he's off in probably the worst way in the movie. I mean, he probably suffers the worst death of everybody. But I just felt like it was kind of a poor execution. I like the idea that the doctor is obsessed with it. I thought that was interesting. I just thought the execution was really, really bad. And it felt rushed. It felt really rushed.
It was bad. It was rushed. It was all those things you said. I agree with you 100% on this, man. I was watching this play out and just like cringing, like watching this. I was like, come on, are we seriously doing this right now? Like you said, the guy stands up in the mask. I thought for a second that Myers was gonna be dead and that this guy was gonna run around in the mask for the rest of the movie, like killing people. No. I thought that. Thankfully, it didn't become that, but. Yeah, man, it's just like, why? This is my thing, and this is, we're talking about a large portion of this movie just being your typical like slasher fare that we've seen over and over and over the last 40 years. Mm-hmm. So this is something that could have made this film really unique. Like this is the angle they could have took with this from the very beginning. Like let's take this kernel of an idea about digging into the mentality of Michael Myers, the obsession that this doctor has with Michael Myers. Like, let's base the film around that. Mm-hmm. Like, how much more cool would this movie have been as like a psychological horror study on Michael Myers and diving into some of this stuff instead of, like you said, doing this really weird, just out of nowhere, just trying to be twist thing that they throw out there, and then literally 5 minutes later, this guy's dead. 5 minutes later, Michael Myers comes to being, kills this dude, stomps his face out, and then that's it. That's the end of the twist, the arc to this twist. It was really just a complete waste of time. It was a complete waste of Will Patton's character, like you said. It was just a complete waste of everything that this movie had going for it at that point. And it's just like it's already like, you drive and you hit Michael with the car. Like I get it. I still just kind of I still don't know how I feel about them always making Michael like this superhuman like dude. I kind of just want him to just be a guy that's just a crazy dude that goes around and kills people, but they just will not let that part of his character go. He is just this immortal assassin that cannot be knocked down for any way, shape, or form. So yeah, the like you said, dude, that whole sequence was poorly played out, and my problem with it is just an idea that they just threw out there for no reason at all. They didn't develop it in any way, shape, or form because the guy's dead 5 minutes later when Michael comes back to being after getting hit by a car. And this is another thing that's just kind of weird. But he wakes up and he proceeds to bash the doctor's face in the car. Then he pulls the guy out, stomps his face out, and he lets the girl just run away. Right. And it's like, okay, is that, I don't know, that's kind of weird, right? He generally doesn't let these people get away, especially somebody that's related to Laurie. Right. And you'd think, well, how would he know that? Well, I don't know. He seems to know all this other stuff after being locked away in this mental institution. So I'm sure he has an idea about who this character is. But yeah, he lets her just run away scot-free. And it's funny. I read a tweet from Jaffe that had an interesting idea. See if I can find this tweet that he put out here, man. But he had this crazy theory regarding Laurie's daughter. In fact, I'll bring that up later because that's gonna apply to a little bit later. in the conversation. But yeah, my problem with that, Brent, is I thought that just to summarize this, I thought that nugget of story or of narrative could have made a really interesting focal point for this film instead of the more typical genre stuff that we saw from this film, and it just got thrown out there just for nothing, and just completely just wasted in that sequence there. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. That was probably the most head scratching part of this movie.
Because you just have this doctor, and he just shows up, and he's all of a sudden the catalyst behind why Michael's out, and he's trying to be the thing, that the push for Michael to get to Laurie's show, because the doctor wants to discover stuff. And like you said, had they kind of explored this stuff from the beginning, at least maybe even hinted at it, you can see like the doctors, you see he's doing the studies, you can see him up late. You could have done a lot of cool things to kind of show the doctor's obsession, as opposed to just making it's just something that happened. It literally happens in like 5 minutes. Like in 5 minutes from Will Patton's death, the doctor's dead, and you're just like, okay, that was a weak ass catalyst to keep this thing going. So it was just really, really strange and poorly executed. I liked the idea. I just feel like it was just a really bad execution in terms of delivering those scenes. So those were preliminary my issues with the second act, and I felt like that hurt this movie in a sizable way. Yeah. But we'll go to the third act now. As we mentioned, Allison gets away from Michael. She makes her way back to Laurie's fortress house in the woods. And, Laurie's already back there with her daughter. And I want to give a shout out to Judy Greer. She has a great role in this movie. And not often does Judy Greer get a lot of good stuff to work with. She's really, really good as Karen Strode, Laurie's daughter. And she has an awesome scene at the end of the movie that is just badass. It kind of ties into just, she's basically been trained since childhood, to be a survivor. Laurie spent all her time, and that's why she lost her daughter, because she just seemed unfit. She had her daughter, shooting guns at a young age and all this stuff, and so they took her daughter away. But so everyone starts to come back to Laurie's house, and then you have the what's been missing. You have the cat and mouse game through the house. You have Michael show up. He attacks Laurie. He gets into the house, and then it begins. The tension that we've been desperately seeking through this movie finally arrives as Laurie is making her way through the house to find Michael. And her house is legit fortified. She's going through every room, hitting buttons after she's cleared the room to drop a cage so nobody can get out. Yeah, and it's
she's like straight out of Rainbow Six Siege in this movie.
Oh yeah, and it's just it was just a very intense set of events that takes place in the house. And then it's finally revealed, as they're making their way through the house. Like I said, Michael gets into the kitchen. He finds the access to this panic room, basically under this island in the kitchen. He flips it over. And this is where Judy Greer is just awesome. Judy Greer is just going, she's yelling for Laurie. She can't find her out because Laurie's been thrown out of a window. And she's screaming, "Mom, I can't do this. I can't do this." Obviously, Michael feeds off fear, and he can tell. He walks around the corner of the steps. He's looking down. And as soon as Judy Greer spots him, she's like, gotcha. And boom! Lights up, Michael. He falls down the steps and whatnot. It's just an awesome scene. And as they're making their way out, Michael gets up again. He tries to attack the girls. And you basically have all three Strodes here fighting Michael. You got people kicking him. You got people, and Allison grabs a knife and stabs him. And finally, once he falls back in the basement, you realize Laurie hits a trap. And this basement, the panic room, the whole time is basically an oven waiting for Michael Myers. And that was just, it was, like I said, it's just it was the strongest part of the film in terms of like tension and entertainment and excitement to see like the Strodes all coming together. They're fighting this one common enemy that's basically just destroyed their family across generations, and you get to see them get their revenge. And it was just a really powerful scene. I thought it was a fantastic ending to the movie. It basically had everything that we wanted from the previous Halloween movie, with the tension and the stalking and the hiding, and you didn't know where you was at. I thought the ending was very, very strong in this movie.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff at the end here, and just before we get to that, this is another one of the things that's like another one of the huge leaps in logic and goofy things about this film. The fact that her daughter runs into the woods after Michael, just stomps dude's face, and she runs into the woods, and she just happens upon Laurie's bunker or whatever. So I was like, all right, we've we've stretched it. We've stretched a lot of things in this film up to this point. This was probably the biggest stretch.
To be fair, Laurie had turned on the lights, and her house is basically a football stadium with lights on. So obviously, if you're out in the woods, you're going to see a small sun off in the distance. That's how much light is protruding. So let's give Allison a little bit of credit. She probably saw the football stadium.
I'll give her a little bit, but there was no point in that sequence did they film her noticing those lights and running towards the lights. She stumbled into the firing range at one point, and she realized that she was on the estate there. And shout out to her dad for just being a total moron. Just that whole sequence, like what are you doing? Yeah. Like that's just, there's some leaps in logic, and then there's just absolute stupidity. And this character was pure stupidity. Like you're in a lockdown bunker, like trying to make sure that Myers doesn't get inside. So you just stroll out of the front door, leave it wide open. You just walk over to a car, start knocking on the window, and you're just a total moron. And I was just like, it was just like, really, in this situation, would you not have been like, hey Lori, hey Karen, there's a cop car outside. Maybe we should check this out. Just maybe like let's huddle together as a team. Like let's bunker down in this. Like let's just not be a complete imbecile during this sequence. But I guess his character was a dumbass from the beginning. So I guess it was just meant to be that he was going to get offed in some strange way. But yeah, the final sequence here. One of the really interesting things about this, Brent, and the movie I thought of during this sequence was The Last House on the Left. Mm-hmm. So this is a movie, not necessarily the original Wes Craven movie, but the newer one. I don't have as much experience with the old one, but the newer one had this really interesting twist about halfway, 3/4 to the movie, and it's why I've really stuck to that movie over the years. It's a very dark, a very disturbing film, but it's just got this twist towards the end where the hunters become the hunted.
Yes.
These guys that have been hunting them throughout the entirety of the film, the family completely reverses it on them, and they're then hunting these guys. Like in terms of their survival, they're just like, the hell with this. We're not going to just sit here and wait to get murdered. We're going to go out here. We're going to take you guys out ourselves. And it's just this super cool twist on the genre that happens in that movie, and that's what I felt during this sequence. In so much that a lot of the scenes they film with Laurie are obviously a callback to the original Halloween. She gets knocked out of the window. Michael goes and looks for her. She's not sitting there in the grass. Yeah. Just like he does in the original. She appears in the shadows in that very famous Halloween shot, from Michael Myers. She starts stalking him at the end of the film. And it was a really interesting kind of twist on things. There was a lot of like the cat and mouse, like you said, at the end initially. But at some point, like the Strodes are hunting Michael. Like they're luring him into the trap. They're baiting him. And then he becomes the prey at the end of this film, which I thought was interesting. I wanted to get your take on that. Like, what did you think about that, or what did you take away from that aspect of it?
I loved it. Honestly, I love it. And the thing is, now here's the thing. Like, this is there are so many similarities to previous Halloween movies. Now, and like and funny thing about that room that Laurie gets pushed out of the window. That room is a 1-to-1. Replica of the final room that she's in the Halloween. The closet, the bed, everything is the exact layout from that room, and so she would know every square inch. She would know exactly where everything is, which is like goes to show the depth of Laurie's planning and how long she's been thinking about this. But no, I love the fact that they're hunting him. I mean, like I said, dude, this is 40 years in the making. This family has been torn apart, and dude, this is what happens when you push someone to the brink. No longer do you fear anything. You now are the scary thing. You are what's terrifying, and you see that. You see it, like you said. They twisted on him. They lure him into the kitchen. The daughter's downstairs crying that she can't do anything, trying to emit that fear that Michael clearly feeds on, and they set him up. And I love that. I thought that was really, really cool because you're seeing 3 generations of Strodes coming together after spending so much time fighting with one another and not being able to bond. They have this one moment with Michael to bond and basically eliminate the person that has ruined their lives. I thought it was an awesome way to shoot that. I thought that was a great setup.
Yeah, I liked it too, and for that reason that you mentioned. So clearly this is a traumatic event that has had an intense effect on not only Lori but the entirety of her family. So it
Hmm.
makes sense that 40 years down the line, when this moment finally arrives, and she talks about it earlier in the film, like she's been waiting for him to escape because she wants to kill him. Like this is something she's been planning for her entire life. So when she finally gets the opportunity to take advantage of this, like she's been thinking about this for 40 years. So it makes sense that she has this whole elaborate setup, and this house is just decked out just for the sole purpose of eventually trapping Michael down in that room and burning him alive. That's
Hmm.
really like her whole life has been dedicated to this for the last 40 years. So I like the fact that they turned that obsession around, and they made her like this kind of scary stalker at the end of the
Hmm.
movie, and she's coming out of the shadows, and she's like stalking around looking for him, and he's the guy that we think is hiding in closets and that kind of stuff. It's so yeah, I dig that. I think it made sense with the way that they were kind of setting up everything.
Hmm. And this is like another comparison is to Halloween H2O. There's a scene where Michael shows up at the school that Laurie's teaching at. She changed her name and everything. He finds out where she is. He shows up. He attacks her son, and as she's getting them in the car to leave, she tells her son, "Leave now." And he's like, "Come with us." She's like, "No, just go." And she grabs an axe, and then she's calling out for Michael. So you get to see another comparison where you see Laurie just kind of confronting her fear. She's had enough. She's at the breaking point. She's going after him. So I mean, you could see a little bit of that comparison to H2O. There's, like I said, there's a ton of nods to all the Halloween movies. I mean, I could even make a point that there's the two cops that are bickering about their sandwiches
Yeah,
in
the
this one.
bond
And
me.
yeah. You got these goofy cops. If anyone has seen Halloween, I think it's 4. There are two goofy ass cops to the point where there's music like that, womp 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 womp, when they show up. Like the
Yeah.
goofy ass music. And you got these two stupid cops, and that's what you have with these guys. They're just it's not as dumb as in Halloween 4, but it is really goofy. Actually, I think it's Halloween 5. Now that I think about it, it's Halloween 5 with the dumb cops, and it's just like, dude, that's so annoying. But that's what they were trying to go with that. Again, another comparison between 5 and this one. You got these two goofy cops that are kind of going back and forth. You can't really take them seriously, but
Hmm.
yeah, but no, overall, dude, the final third act I just felt was incredibly strong. It was really, really good. It was nice to see Laurie kind of get that revenge that she's desperately needed in her life. I mean, like I said, this has been building up for 40 years, and all of a sudden
Hmm.
everything just comes into play. The pieces fall where they needed to be, and the Strode girls can kill Michael. And supposedly, we'll assume he's dead. We'll assume he's dead because obviously we see the house burning down. The girls get into the back of a pickup of somebody who's driving by, and as they're driving off, you get another shot of the basement. There's fire, but there's not enough. You don't get a quick enough glimpse to actually identify if Michael is still down there.
Hmm.
And if you stay till the end of the credits, you hear breathing. You hear Michael's breathing in his mask. But another cool thing I thought that was cool before you get to the credits is you'll see the Strode girls in the back,
Hmm.
and there's Allison. She's got the knife in her hand. And it's a freeze frame on the knife in her hand. I don't know what they're trying to allude to, but go back to Halloween 4. Jamie Lloyd, Laurie's daughter, in that storyline, she kills her mom after her encounter with Michael Myers. She's got a knife. She's wearing a mask, and that's how it cuts. Where you got Loomis, no, at the end of it. It's just a goofy ending, but another just kind of you can draw comparisons to that as well. So. But like I said, dude, like I really, really like this. I want to really, really like this movie. I do think it's probably the best storyline in terms of the sequels, which isn't saying much.
Yeah.
But it's just the beginning is really strong in terms of character development with Jamie Lee Curtis. The ending is frantic. It's intense. It's taut. It's a good watch. But it's that bulk of the middle where you have just the lack of the tension, the lack of the stalking. You don't have you have the weak ass plot twist. You've got actually again, it's the weak ass execution of the plot twist, and then the misplaced humor that kind of hurts this movie in a way where. Look, man, when I think about Halloween 1, I think about the tension of Michael stalking people, and we didn't have any of that. And I feel like that's just something you have to have in a movie that's being hyped so much as like a true sequel to the first one. They're going to pay so much respect to the Carpenter classic, and that bulk, that middle of the movie, it's just slasher 101, dude.
Yeah. And they had to retcon the entire franchise out of the picture. Just
Mm-hmm.
like, all right, we're getting rid of everything. We're just gonna start once again. Like the first one's the only one we got right. Let's start there and go on to the next sequence. It's funny. It's funny too, man. Like just talking about these callbacks. This Halloween ended the same way Halloween 2 did, with Michael just burning in flames,
Yep.
right? And it's funny because, dude, in a lot of ways, this movie felt like Halloween 2 to me. In a lot of ways, just the heightened like basic slasher stuff, like that
Hmm.
was a lot of what Halloween 2 was. The running over Michael with the car and some of the things that we've talked about. There's a lot of allusions to Halloween 2, and that the ending is very much Halloween 2, to the point where they're like turning on the air things, and like the same thing that happens at the end of that movie is happening in that panic room down there before
Right.
before Michael gets lit up in flames. And we didn't have the goofy Michael slow walking out of the flames that we had in Halloween too. But I was prepared for it. I thought it was coming. was it was like, all right, well, they're making all these allusions to it. So yeah, there's some things I want to talk about on that, Brent. So obviously we've been talking a lot about the callbacks in this film, and even some things we haven't mentioned, like the intro sequences. It was just classic Halloween
Hmm.
music, fonts, the pumpkin, all that kind of stuff, the stuff that we've seen over and over and over. We the all of Allison's friends got offed.
Hmm.
It's like the group that's talking like in the beginning of the film, like those are the main victims. So it's all set up from the get go, just like it was in the first Halloween. And there's a lot of stuff in this film, like we've talked about, that alludes to these other films. So my question to you is at the end of the day, like did this reboot even need to happen? Like, why do a reboot and just do the exact same things that you've already done in the past?
Hmm.
A lot of what they've done in this film, like we've talked about, is stuff that they've done in the other Halloween movies. Like
Hmm.
I get that you've convoluted the lore and the story of Halloween to the point that it's unmistakable, and you're trying to redo it over and over with Rob Zombie and whoever else is going to be up next,
Hmm.
to try and redo this thing again, and you've kind of just screwed the pooch when it comes to that. So you want to go back and try to start over. But why do that? Why go back and just do the same thing? Like, why not take this opportunity if you're going to go back and just do something completely different? Do what we talked about. Take
Hmm.
advantage of this idea, this great kernel of this doctor who's raised in the shadow of Loomis, who's obsessed with Michael Myers and his serial killing, and build on this idea of trying to dig into the psychology of Michael. And I understand that they've tried to do some of this maybe a little bit in some of the films in the past, but I feel like with some more accomplished filmmakers and some modern sensibilities when it comes to this stuff, especially with the way psychological horror is nowadays with some of these films, like they could have really dug into something special here and made something that was unique and given us something to grasp onto in terms of Halloween or even its future. Like at the
Hmm.
end of this movie, I'm just sitting here in the same place I was at the end of Halloween 2. It's just like,
Hmm.
okay, this is, there's some weird stuff that happens here. Like we don't have the Lori sister thing going on, but
Hmm.
it's like we got a bunch of other stuff going on, and it's like, did this really need to happen? Like, should they have just gone another way with this if they're going to reboot it? That's kind of my thoughts right now.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know what I mean, this was. I don't know if there was ever going to be another Halloween plan for a while. I mean, with the way the zombie movies were just utter trash. The Thorn trilogy ended poorly with the Curse of Michael Myers, so it was nothing to really build on there. The zombie movies were done. I think the only way they were going to be able to do this was reboot it, and a reboot slash alternate sequel, alternate universe sequel. And
Mhm.
in that regard, I mean, they made it pretty clear early on. This is almost like a love letter to the original. This is for the fans. And I understand. Yeah, there's a lot of things they could have explored here. And I don't know if maybe that's just something that Danny McBride and David Gordon Green and Jeff Faraday or Jeff Frady, whatever his name is, the other writer, maybe they just
Mhm.
didn't explore it. And to be fair, Danny McBride said, they have ideas on where they want to go to next. They have ideas. I mean, they don't. The sequel hasn't been greenlit. I mean, it will be greenlit by Monday now with
Oh yeah,
with a 77 million haul that's opening weekend on a $10 million
clearly.
budget. So I mean, we are going to get more Halloween movies. Whether or not we're going to get the same people on board that wrote this one, I would actually be surprised if they got David Gordon Green and Danny McBride and Jeff back on for this one. It just seems like this was just a one-off to show that David Gordon Green can do horror and do it well. I mean, like like I said, there are some strong elements to this, but man, I don't know how much they could have really done early on. I mean, you can see snippets of it with that doctor thing. I mean, obviously they have ideas, but it's just the execution of it. But, I mean, in terms of why, I mean, I'm sure Blumhouse, the only reason they did this is because they saw the draft from David Gordon Green and said, hey, look, this is something that we can build on here. And, I mean, if you look at it, dude, this almost plays out kind of like the way The Force Awakens did. I mean, if you look at The Force Awakens and A New Hope, there's a lot of comparisons there. There's a lot of comparisons that's basically continuing a story that we already know. So I mean, I feel like this is kind of like the same thing. They took the DNA from the first one, the blueprint, put their own kind of spin on it to put a different continuation of the story. And that's what they did. They played it safe, even though some of the decisions they made weren't as safe as I think they would have liked. But I just feel like they just played it safe to kind of give this franchise a reboot. They knew this would be the best way for it to move forward without being, as silly as the Thorn trilogy. I feel like they just played it safe. This is the easiest way for them to get this franchise back on track and be profitable.
Yeah. I can see that, and I could be in the minority here. Like at this point in my life, Brent, I am a fan of the smarter horror movies. Like that's kind of the stuff I gravitate towards. And I'm not talking like this doesn't have to be any like mind blowing like
right.
artful like horror or anything like that. I just I always go back to The Strangers. Like that's kind of my gold standard for horror of the last however many years. It's like this was a movie not about killing people. It was about this group of people that terrorized these two individuals for an entire 90-minute film, and it was just so effectively filmed, and sound was so effectively used that it was just incredibly impactful. It just something like that, or like a lot of these psychological horror movies that we're seeing come out now. Like I feel like I don't gravitate to the gore porn or any of that kind of stuff. I'm not even really like a huge slasher genre fan. I actually prefer something like Scream, which I thought was really clever at the time when that came out. So it's like I don't know if this is just maybe my just taste or my sensibilities just not lining up, and maybe this is what people want. Maybe they just want Michael just running through a neighborhood and just killing people, and there's not any really much to it other than that. Like maybe I'm in the minority here, man. I don't know.
No, I just think, when we look at horror compared to what it was in 1970, we'd never had a slasher movie like that before. We'd never had that type of horror. That's what made it so popular, is because it was the first of its kind. And then, like you said, the Friday the 13th came out, the Leatherface movies came out, and all these other slashers came out and kind of just progressed the genre forward. Even though Halloween wasn't technically a slasher, it kind of got pulled into it because it was considered like the mother of all slashers. It's the one that started it all. And so it kind of got pulled into that. And they're like, okay, look, this is how we got to make the movies. And if you look at all the subsequent Halloween movies, there are more and more slashers. They don't have what made Carpenter so classic. But that's why I think it's hard for them to go back and be like, hey, look, let's make it 1-to-1 with the tension, because that probably just doesn't suit anybody when they think of Michael Myers, because you have one movie, Halloween, that did that so well, and then hundreds of other thousands of movies that everyone is so used to. It's really hard for them to say, hey, look, this is a Michael Myers movie. It's a slasher. And then you go in for that slow plotting thing. You and I would appreciate it because that's psychological horror. If you're stalking people, it's not psychological horror for the victims. It's psychological horror for the fans, for the people watching. Because you don't know when the guy's going to strike. It's a play on the audience. You don't have that with all these other slashers. It's just you're there for the gore.
Yeah. Yeah, which is fine. Like if that's your thing, that's your thing. It's just I guess when you think about it, Brent, has there really only been one good Halloween movie?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's really what it comes down to, right? There's been one good one and 15 bad ones.
Yeah, none of them have ever come close to capturing the magic and feel of the original Halloween. I mean, if you go back and watch Halloween now, there's some weak points to it. I mean, it's not the best acted movie. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis is really good, but and Donald Pleasance is awesome. I love Donald Pleasance. He was committed to that role, dude.
He's hilarious, man.
Donald Pleasance is committed to that role, and I appreciate that with Donald Pleasance. But it's the side characters. They're just not great actors, but it's not about the acting. It's about the atmosphere. It's about what John Carpenter did with the camera, playing tricks on the audience. He was attacking the audience, not so much the victims in the film. He was going after the audience, and that's what made his work so special. That's what made it so good, and that's what's lacking so much in all these Halloween movies, including this new one.
Yeah, and like you said, there's like the clever stuff he did with the camera on this extremely limited budget. This
Yeah.
is a guy who just had a vision for a film. Basically, he had like a handy cam. It was like,
Hmm.
let me just make a film and see what I can do here. But like the first person shots, like the first shot in that movie of Michael going through and when he has that fateful encounter with his sister, that kind of sets off this whole chain of events. Like
Hmm.
like this stuff's really really it was really unique at the time, and it's still kind of unique. We don't see a lot of that in these films nowadays. So just being able to take some of those, I'm always a big fan of those slow, like extended shots in movies.
Yeah.
Do,
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
have doesn't have to be in horror. I think it's something like Goodfellas, like that
Yeah.
extended sequence where the camera's just rolling forever, however many minutes that's rolling. But those
Yep.
shots are always really, really cool. And Carpenter was onto something when he did it with the original Halloween. And I know we saw that crop up here as a little bit of an homage. There was, one extended shot sequence, but even the way that was filmed, it wasn't as impactful as the original
Hmm.
one. It wasn't. We didn't follow Michael around for really an extended period of time. It wasn't that long, and it was all kind of one note.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, I just at the end of the day, Brent, when I walked out of the theater, I was just really asking myself. I was like, I kind of feel like we're in the same place we were after Halloween too.
Hmm.
What was there really any point to do this reboot if we're not gonna maybe try and go in at least somewhat of a different direction? Like I
Right.
get being faithful to the original and giving the fans what they want and being an homage and all that stuff. And like I said, maybe I'm just off base here and I'm not the target audience for this, but
Hmm.
I just feel like we're right back where we were after Halloween 2, and I don't know if that's the place we want to be. But I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm with you 100%. Like I said, I really really wanted to like this movie. I was really excited for it, and where they're gonna go from here, I don't know. I mean, but I mean they're gonna go somewhere, and I just hope that there's some kind of continuity between the writers, whoever's writing this next one. I hope they have all the notes because this could easily spiral out of control. This could
Hmm.
easily just go right back to what made the first, group of sequels just terrible, and progressively worse. I mean, this could, it's wide open. That's the
Yeah.
thing. This ended. It's wide open. It could go a multitude of ways. You could have Allison being the most scarred now with this event. She had the knife in her hand. I mean, they could explore the psyche of her as a character, how this affects her. Could she become the killer? Could she become the new Laurie Strode? Is Michael alive? Is he dead? Is he going to spawn a copycat killer? I mean, we don't have no idea. And they could go a lot of ways with this. It
Hmm.
was just such, like I said, as a fan of the original, I can appreciate the stuff that David Gordon Green did with the homages and all the Easter eggs. That's cool, but it doesn't. You just don't know where they're going to go from this, and when you really sit
Yeah.
down to think about it, this wasn't even close to Carpenter's classic. Yes, I would say it's probably the best of the sequels. I still think H2O was actually a pretty solid entry, but it's just at the end of the day, none of these, even this one, as strong as the opening and ending are, just doesn't have what made the original so good.
Yeah. No, and I agree with you, man. And I'm gonna be interested to see where it goes. And I guess that's kind of my thing. It's like where do they go from here? Like if you have a great plan, like cool, like let me see where that goes from here. But that's kind of one of the other things that I wanted to touch on with you is I wanted to get into that ending a little bit with you, Brent. And you've mentioned a couple different ways they could go with this, and you mentioned a little bit about when they maybe tried to do an inkling of this idea in the past. So this was Jaffe's tweet earlier. I was thinking about, man, and this is like, for the record, I don't agree that this is the way that I think they'll go or they should go. In fact, I'd be pretty dumbfounded if they went this route. But this was his tweet. Want to get your thoughts on it? Is it blasphemous to suggest that Myers raped Lori and that is where her kid came from, and the evil was passed to granddaughter who holds the bloody knife that camera settles on and freeze frames at the end? Question mark. So that is Jaffe's totally out there idea. So like I said, I don't subscribe to that theory. Or don't think honestly don't think that makes any sense. So
Mm-hmm.
if that is the way that they're going, then heaven help us all. But just want to get your thoughts on this idea of just kind of zeroing in on the knife in the hand. Like what's the message there that we're supposed to take from it? Is it simply like you said, the fact that this is a Strode who's now battle hardened, who's gone face to face with Michael Myers. She can hold her own, and we're just trying to reinforce like the kind of combatant that we've turned her into, or is this a hint towards something more sinister than the future. Maybe not as crazy as what Jaffe suggested here, but do we see this like traumatically scar her and she becomes some kind of a killer? And the Strodes themselves, like they make this full on turn from the hunter to the hunted at the end of this film, and maybe that's the way they are for the future now. Maybe they're hunting people now. Don't think that makes any sense for Lori or her daughter, but maybe her granddaughter they could use. I still think that's like a huge stretch and would get into some really weird stuff. So I kind of hope that's not the route they go. But I don't know, man. What's your we've kind of bandied around it a little bit here, but what's your take on that kind of final shot there? And what, if any, theories do you have, or what do you think it's alluding to?
First of all, I think Jaffe might have watched Halloween 6: The Curse of Michael Myers, the producer's cut, because in the producer's cut, it suggested that Michael did have sex with somebody, and they did need his child to continue on this thorn thing or whatever it was. It is alluded to that this is actually his kid, and you're like, what? Michael's banging chicks now, producing kids. Like, what is going on? But I mean, no, I think Jaffe is just Jaffe, and I'm sure if you sat down with him, he'd probably have more information behind that, how he came to that. Yeah. But no, if I had to guess, man, based on how they approach Laurie Strode's character and how they show, a woman taking her life back after being assaulted by a dude, and you look at Allison, she goes through the same thing. I think it does. If I had to go based on that, the way they've written this story, I'd say this is going to be Allison's going to be battle hardened. She's going to have issues of her own going forward, and they're going to have to find a way to make somebody be the threat to Allison. I don't know how they would do it. I'm sure, like I said, they could go a lot of ways with this. I just think at the end of the day, dude, when you're taking all this stuff with Michael Myers and you're trying to build on the lore, the thing about Halloween 1978, dude, is the simplicity of it all. He's just a dude that breaks out, randomly stalks Laurie Strode and her friends. I don't know. We don't know why he's doing it. That's the beauty of it. We don't know why he's doing shit. He's just out killing people. He's hunting people down, stalking them. We don't know why. Anytime you start going into the sequels, you're going to start looking into what makes Michael go. And I feel like that actually takes away from the sinister nature of him and makes him less scary when you do know what is behind his motivation. I don't want to know, and I feel like anytime you go into sequels, you're going to have to explore that. You're going to have to explore. Otherwise, it's just the same shit. You don't have a plot twist. And I just feel like no matter where they go from here, it's just never going to compare to the original. And I feel like that's the problem that Halloween has. That's going to be the burden that the original is going to have to carry on, is just inferior sequels trying to add more to a story that really doesn't need anything added to it.
So, and I just keep going to this theme of this conversation, Brent, but why not try something different then? If we keep chasing like the gold standard that the original film set and can't match up to it because because of the genre or because of just the complete twisting of the lore and the story over the years, like whatever the reason that we can't get back to that original Halloween feel, like why not try something different? Like, why not go in a different direction? Why not try this crazy idea of digging into the psychology of Michael Myers and with this obsessive doctor and building something around that, and we can still come out of that film even with a doctor who's obsessed with him and have no idea what makes Michael Myers tick, and he could still be this like really just crazy dude that is just scary as all hell. Like you could still have that vibe in a film like that. It's just like if director after director after director is going to try to make something that can match up to the original Halloween, then why not try something else? And I guess the logical conclusion out of that is nobody's trying to make the original Halloween anymore. They're trying to make whatever slasher 101 stuff. So so I guess it's just kind of a pipe dream, man.
And I don't want to drag this on any longer than it needs to go, but because I want to wrap this thing up. But here's the thing, man. Like when you talk about that, exploring the psychology of Michael Myers, that is the one redeeming quality that I think Zombie did so well with the 2007 Halloween. Is the first part of that movie is basically Loomis with Michael as he's a child, trying to figure out what you basically see young Michael just eroding into just the evil person that he is. You see Michael as a child, you see him being tormented. Obviously my issue with the zombie movies, everything goes back to white trash. folks and white trash and all this stuff. You got William Forsythe just being just completely caricature of just the epitome of just trashy people, and he does terrible things to Michael and his family. But you get the backstory behind Michael, and then you have these sessions where you just see Michael slipping more and more into madness, and you see Loomis struggling, trying to figure out what's going on. I really thought that was Malcolm McDowell's strongest part in that movie, was that relationship with young Michael, and they did try to explore that. But then, just like we have with this one, as soon as Michael comes back to Haddonfield, it's just a slasher 101, just cliche after cliche with none of the tension that made the original so good. I feel like, dude, this movie would have been a lot better if it had just the tension from the first one. If that middle act would have been just more Michael stalking, I think it would have made it more intense. It would have made it more, scary to watch. And maybe that plot twist wouldn't have seemed so bad. I mean, if it had been executed properly, you could have had that. It just came down to execution. But I would love to see them explore
a perfect example in that is the scene with the kid in the vampire getup when he's in the backyard and they're playing with the security. It's the security lights.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how cool would that have been if they drew that out a little bit, where the lights are flashing and he's disappearing? We get one light flicker, then he shows up and offs him. It's just like that was a total wasted sequence. Like, you could have built a really high intensity like stalking session out of that shot, and he created a lot of tension, and maybe even let the kid get away. It's okay to let these people get away, like we saw with Annie in the original one, and come back to this at a later point. But it's just like, it's just like that one really rang true to me, because I was like, all right, this is the perfect setup for something that could be really creepy with these spotlights turning on and off and Michael appearing in random spots throughout this yard. Like, that's something that could have really been set up, and it was just, once again, just totally wasted.
Mm-hmm. I agree. But like I said, man, at the end of the day, there's some strong elements to this film. The middle act failed it, and it kind of basically ruined it for me. I mean, it's an okay Halloween movie. It's the best of the sequels, but again, I just don't know if we're ever going to get anything that even comes close to Carpenter's classic.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Is Mike dead?
Oh no. Nah. $77 million. He's alive and well. We'll see Michael back again.
Am I the only one that prefers him to not be like this supernatural dude?
No, and that's why everyone loves it. That's why they love the simplicity. He's just an evil dude.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever they explore like the supernatural elements, that's when it ruins it. Or are you just talking about him taking like a shot from a truck and he can get back up?
Just everything that goes into that. It's like, at this point, we've seen him shot through the head, ran over by a car, shot with shotgun shells, burned alive. So if he comes back from this now, it's like, all right, at some point we've got to address the supernatural aspects of this character, and I feel like that's like your hand is forced at that point, because how is this dude alive?
And we've seen what happens to the quality of the movies when they go down that road. So it's he's going to come back, and how they're going to do it, I don't know, but it's just I just don't think we're ever going to get anything close to the original. Yeah.
I would tend to agree with you, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's gonna do it, man. So a little bit of an extended discussion here, but I think we had a lot of things that we needed to talk about with this film. There's a lot to mine out of it, and a lot for especially yourself as somebody who's so engrossed in the Halloween franchise, no matter how terrible it's been over the years. I just think there's a lot to talk about here. So we definitely want to get your guys' thoughts on it. After you see Halloween, definitely jump into the comment section. Let us know what you guys thought of the movie. Chime in on the discussion. Like, we want to know your thoughts. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? What did you think about all this? Definitely chime in. We love hearing from you guys. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at The Short Pause. If you like what we do here, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell so you always know when we go live. We do these kind of one-off movie discussions every now and then. If you guys like these, want to see more of these, let us know, and I'll definitely try and chime in with some more of them. But that is going to do it for us, Brent. Anything else you want to get off your chest here?
No, man. Just want to hear from you guys and girls. If you go check out Halloween, if you're a fan of the series and you love this one, I'd love to hear why you like it. Sound off in the comments below. Let us know. We want to hear from you. Michael's back, dude, and he's making a lot of money for that. So we're going to see more Michael Myers going forward.
Absolutely. So that is going to do it for us. Thanks, everybody, for stopping by. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Have a good evening. We'll talk to you on the flip side. Adios.
See you guys.